I just want you to tell your own story, Mary. You were originally from Newmarket in North Cork.
Patricia, I'm sorry if I get emotional, okay?
Okay, you're all right. Take your time.
Because originally I come from Newmarket, County Cork, okay?
All right.
My mother, Eileen Smyth, who I never saw her face, was put into the Magdalene Laundry when she was 4 months pregnant on me by a priest in Newmarket. She was put into St. Vincent's in St. Mary's Road. And Patricia, I never saw her face. It's totally and utterly devastated my life. To think they could kidnap my mother against her wishes and put her into a lockup and incarcerate her into the Magdalene Laundry. That was my mother. Patricia, to make matters worse, I was then born in Fermoy in Cork and then put into Clonakilty Industrial School. Never went to school. Worked as a complete slave. Never mixed with the outside world. Then I was put into Mallow. Mallow wasn't too bad. But apart from that, I was then incarcerated into the Magdalene Laundry in Sunday's. This was all done by the dirty, filthy Catholic Church because my mother wasn't married. And in case, Patricia, that I'd end up the same like my mother, I was put into the Sunday's.
And Mary, explain what a typical day was like in a Magdalene Laundry.
Well, first and foremost, I want to emphasise my body went to complete shock when I went into the Magdalene Laundry. For the simple reason, when that door was locked, Patricia, you were never to come out. There was elderly ladies in there. Your name was changed when you went in there. Your hair was chopped when you went in there. Everything, the little thing you possessed, was taken from you. I respect what it may be. You were taken, your dignity was taken from you, your identity was taken from you. Literally, your life was taken from you. I respected what the day entailed. It's what happened when you entered that place. Never to come out of there. You got up in the morning and it was all to do with prayers. You went to Mass. We never knew the time. There was no such thing as time. I want to emphasise it was worse, and I'll emphasise worse than any prison. In prison, they have freedom. They can get out, but you were never let outside that door. You went to the laundry, you walked in the laundry till about, 6 o'clock?
And
2 o'clock?
That was hard work in the laundry.
Literally, hard work, constantly steamy laundry all day. You weren't allowed to talk all day. There was just the nun walk up and down, and if she see you talking, she'd give you a wallop. You weren't allowed to talk. And also, everybody in there, they never knew they were going to come out there. That was the most horrific thing.
And was that 6 days a week?
You never knew the time, Patricia. Never knew the time. You got up in the morning at 6, I believe, and went to bed at 6. Walked in the laundry all day. Even in the restaurant, I reckon when I was there was about 200 women there. 200, and we were not allowed to talk. The work was severe in that Magdalene Laundry. All day we walked. And not alone that, we never knew we were going to get out there. And it was literally appalling to be incarcerated in that place. The work was genuinely, definitely severe. And the nuns had a great time in there while we did our slaving in the laundry. Not alone that.
And some people will say, Mary, why couldn't you simply just walk out the front door and leave? Explain that, why you couldn't just up and leave.
It was impossible because the doors were locked. And we never got out. And there was a big wall around at the back of it. I actually used to try and get up at the wall to see could I get out there.
And of course, you didn't understand your rights at the time.
We couldn't get out of there. It was impossible. They'd be better escaping from prison than they would escaping from there. You had a way getting out of prison, but you had no way getting out of the Magdalene Laundry, and the nuns were constantly around you.
And were any of the nuns kind to you?
Not in the Sisters of Mercy or the Sisters of Good. In Mallow, I could say they weren't too bad. I could say that in Mallow. Wasn't Clonakilty and it's Good Shepherds, Mercy. If they're called Mercy, there's no such thing as mercy. And they took your life from you. But these nuns, if you call them nuns, didn't care how we felt. And how, another thing I want to emphasise, I thought my mother was in there. Because of the cruelty man put me in there. I thought my mother was in there, which was more devastating for me.
And was she in there?
I went back in 1990. The was she there? And the nun told me that the cruelty man put her into the mental hospital after she gave birth to me.
And you've never been able to trace your mother, Mary?
How could I? When she was put into the Lee Road, when she died 10 years later, this one I found in 1990. She was taken into the Magdalene Laundry and was pregnant on me.
And does she have family? Does she have family in Newmarket?
I found my uncle's afterwards. That's I discovered that the priest in Newmarket, in Kerry Road, Newmarket. I was originally from Kerry Road, Newmarket. But the priest in Newmarket gave orders to lock my mother up because she was pregnant on her second child. I won't tell you what happened to Christy, my brother, because we're not on the radio to discuss.
Okay.
My brother.
And how did you eventually get out of the Magdalene Laundries?
Well, the cruelty man came up one day. I was just called. My name was changed. It was actually changed to Mairead because the nun in there was giving me all names. When I went there first and I wouldn't eat for 3 solid weeks, I just wanted to die. Patricia, my body went into shock. And I think to this day, I have never survived it. It has shattered me.
Yeah, because what year did you get out of the Magdalene Laundries?
I was in there for about a year.
And you got out in...
And the cruelty man said, because my mother never got a chance, he was giving me a chance.
So what year was that?
And at that ground, he took me out and I was sent back to Rochestown Road, where I was a slave, was working as a slave in Rochestown Road. That's when this big house.
And what has life been like? What has life been like since?
You see, I was afraid to have children in case I'd be locked up. So that affected my whole life. Because I was afraid to have children. This fear was bred into me. Because I knew my mother was locked up for having children. I was put into the Magdalene Laundry for having children. And I went back in 1990. And I was actually told, Patricia, no word of a lie, that some of them actually found their mothers in the Magdalene Laundry. Some of their sons and daughters, and sons as well, found their mothers and fathers. Imagine doing that to people. What is crime? Why is it to have a crime outside? A child outside marriage?
I know.
What crime is that?
It's so hard for people today to understand.
And another thing, Patricia, who gives these church and state authorities to take away people's families, kidnap their families and lock them into Magdalene Laundry?
I know.
Incarcerated for life.
I know. Okay, stay there because I want just stay on the line, Mary, because I just want to.
Sorry, I just want to say something.
Yeah.
They should get justice. The Magdalene Laundry should get justice. Some kind of recognition.
Okay, for everybody, just stay on the line because I have Stephen O'Riordan with me in studio. I'll come back to you in a moment, Mary. Just stay on the line. It's very difficult, I have to say, to listen to Mary's story. Mary's story is very typical of what women went through in the Magdalene Laundries.
Yeah, I suppose Mary's story is just one example of many of the women that were incarcerated into the Magdalene Laundries, and I think the emotion in Mary's voice in itself can give you an indication of what she and other women have suffered. And I think it is important that Irish society start to begin to realise that these women were completely stripped of any sort of dignity, self-respect. Their constitutional rights were taken away from them, their human rights were taken away from them, and they were almost downgraded to second-class citizens effectively because they were deemed too pretty, or some of the girls, for example, would have got raped by friends or family relatives, and therefore they were deemed as being wild, or as in Mary's mother's case, they would have had children out of wedlock. And effectively these women were just put into these institutions and almost forgotten about, and they were used as slaves. And I think Mary is quite right to say that she was used as a slave, because none of these women ever received a penny for the work that they did. And you must begin to realise that a lot of these women were 12, 14, 16 years of age.
They were young girls.
Very young girls. And I think it's absolutely horrendous to think that these women never physically got a penny for the work that they did. And I was coming down this morning and listening to the news, and just to think that someone like Ivan Calloway is actually coming away with a pension, a golden handshake, hundreds of thousands in his pocket. And yet here we are, women who completely suffered at the hands of the religious orders and the Irish state, and they've effectively got nothing. No pension, no thank you, no acknowledgement. And I think that's why we wanted to do the charity single for these women, because we wanted to give them some form of recognition in terms that the young people in Ireland actually want to take on these women's stories. And I think it's important that the young people in Ireland take on these women's stories and not to let it die, in the sense, or in the hope that the government and the religious orders hope that these women effectively die and never come out to tell their stories. And I think by constantly putting this into the media and constantly reminding people of the injustice that these women suffered, I think we'll begin to realise the enormity of what these women have gone through.
Absolutely. Mary, can I tell you, we're getting an awful lot of calls and texts in from listeners to say you're making an awful lot of people cry. They're very upset listening to your story. Heartbreaking is how Anne in Mallow describes it. Anne says that the nuns have an awful lot to answer for. Joe in Bandon says, as a Catholic, I want Mary to know we're not all like that. It was the hierarchy in the church. Shame on them for what they did. I'm devastated, says Joe, listening to Mary this morning, to think that another human being could suffer like that. I offer sympathies to her as a member of the Catholic Church, and I apologise as a member of the Catholic Church that she could have been harmed in that way. And lots of Mitchelstown listeners says, my heart bleeds listening to Mary this morning. God bless her. Shame on the nuns, how dare they. Mary, you're an inspiration, is what a lot of people are saying. So thank you. A lot of calls and texts coming in. Stay on the line, Mary, because I need to take a break, and we're also going to play the sound, but stay on the line. We'll talk to you in just a moment.